Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to another episode on the Speak Sense podcast with me, Osama Musa, Muslim Amir. And today I have somebody who I've been trying to get on this podcast for a very long time, somebody who I can happily and easily regard as a dear brother, and someone who's making great waves in the industry for Muslims and for the space of Muslims, and helping many business owners, entrepreneurs, and service providers grow and network. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Please help me give a warm welcome to the co-founder of Amazing, Mr. Raees. Woo! Assalamu alaikum, bro.
Alaikum salam, brother. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Jazakallah khair. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. So, bro, tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey.
Okay, so in a nutshell, basically, my name is Raees Sayed. I am an economics grad, coming out of uni, well, not even coming out of uni and finishing my exams. I went straight into the family business, which is chemicals and manufacturing, a lot in the agriculture industry. It taught me everything I know today, to have the confidence to be able to even think about creating my own startup and building a team around it and all the rest of it. In terms of a little bit about myself, I come from a mixed race background. My mother's a revert, my dad is Indian. And having that sort of mixed sort of heritage and origin and living in a very non-Muslim area as well growing up, I think were all the sort of puzzle pieces that came together to allow us to create and think about creating Amazing as a platform, which we believe is a platform that uplifts our ummah with every click. It adds empowerment to Muslim-friendly businesses. It adds accessibility to Muslim consumers. So what we're trying to do as a whole for the company of Amazing, what the team are doing as well, is really push the boundaries of what Muslims in the West have accessibility to and should expect from our own community. So that when we talk about the ummah, we're talking about them in a positive way, not always relating to charity and all the rest of it, but talking about how we can go that next step with innovators and new technology and how we use that to really drive our community forward in terms of what we should have as an ummah.
MashaAllah, it's amazing. Obviously, for anyone watching this that doesn't know, I really highly suggest after watching this interview to go and check out Amazing and see what they're doing. And it's basically an idea where it's like it's a service provider for Muslims to access. It's like a directory. So if you need any type of service and you want it to be Muslim based, you'll find it on their services. And I mean, for business owners like myself, who I categorically only work with Muslims in the sense of my marketing, my target audience is Muslims, this tool will obviously be a great resource for somebody like me, and I'm sure many other Muslim business owners. So, bro, you spoke about obviously coming from a mixed race background. Alhamdulillah, your mum's a revert. That's amazing to hear. And obviously, your dad is of a South Asian background. So, what was it like for you growing up in the West as a Muslim? And I just want to touch on something. Obviously, your mum's a revert. Is she from the UK originally, or is she from a different background?
Yeah, so just onto that question straight away. My mum is half English, half Caribbean. So her dad was from Indonesia. Grew up in a sort of Catholic upbringing as well. So, aware of God or Abrahamic religions and all the rest of it, but I think always searching for something a little bit more deeper in terms of what she wanted for her understanding of the world and religion and all the rest of it. And personally, growing up for me, I'd say I had a relatively easy childhood in that sense, in a sense of when you think about my dad being a first-gen immigrant coming from, I think it was Kenya, technically Uganda at the time, and at the age of 6, time growing up then was pretty difficult. I think anyone of that generation will probably testify for the same. But I think they did all the hard work and sort of grit and determination that made my childhood much easier to be able to deal with. But don't get me wrong, I didn't grow up in a highly densely Muslim population, and a lot of that is the origin of what we've been doing with Amazing. But that being said, whilst I was probably one of the only brown people in the class, and certainly the only Muslim in the class, I never felt out of place. And I think that's partly because of the way my mum raised me. having that sort of mixed background, you don't look at yourself as an outsider, you look at yourself as part of a bigger, more mixed situation. So when you are in those mixed sort of groups and you are probably the minority, didn't really affect me as much. So I mean, I'm quite pleased for that. The only things that I think, looking back, really did sort of push forward what we were doing with Amazing today is, you know, for me, going the extra mile to get halal food or to go to Jummah or to do anything related to my religion. You know, you're not even having, you know, Jummah prayer at school, which I'm sure is the case for a lot of Muslims that grow up in a similar demographic. But for me, I didn't think twice about that. If I had to drive that far, that's just how far I had to drive. Until I went to uni of Leicester. I don't know if you've ever been to Leicester, but that was a serious culture shock for me, alhamdulillah. Beautiful city, loads of fantastic people, and a seriously mixed community, which again was great for me coming from where I've come from. But it was like the cohesiveness done right. Like everyone was aware of each other's beliefs, faiths, cultures, and all the rest of it. But it was just so normal. It was the norm there, and still is the norm there. So for me, Leicester plays a very vital role in what we've done today. And I met my missus there as well. Exactly the same mix, really weird. And you know, I think for me growing up, like I said, it's a lot easier than it could have been, thanks to the likes of the works of my dad's generation and technically my mum's generation as well.
And I think that's, you know, super important, and it's nice to recognize what they were able to put in place for our generation to be able to flourish the way that we have. And I think this is why it's even more important for us to carry on their good work with now uplifting the next generation. And it's really nice because obviously at Muslim Emir, it's like our work with you crosses over in many aspects. You know, you want to serve the ummah, we want to serve the ummah. You're doing it in a certain way, we're doing it in a certain way, and there's quite a bit of crossover there, which is really nice. And I think, you know, alhamdulillah, that you weren't put in a position. First of all, kudos to your mother, mashallah, jazakallah, may Allah grant her, you know, success and khair for her efforts, because that, I think, helps shape your ideologies of life growing up. So like for us, obviously, my parents were first gen, I was first gen with them, I came with them into the country. Yeah. So it was all new to them. They weren't aware of like what it was be like to grow up as a child there. Obviously, they were going through their own challenges as an adult. And then, you know, the upbringing and the ideologies really differs. I think, you know, the way that we were brought up in my household would have a great impact on the way that I viewed the world in comparison to you. So, you know, we were always raised like, you know, to speak Arabic at home, that we're Muslims. We should try our best to always interact with Muslims. And more, that's just to protect you rather than to do anything else, right? So that created a lot of, you know, barriers in our childhood. You know, some birthday parties I wasn't allowed to go to in fear of maybe you would end up eating pork by accident, or, you know, they may not understand your values. Whereas, you know, in your upbringing, you obviously having a mother that was raised in the UK anyway, or in the West, and being a mixed race background. So she wasn't, you know, just fully white, where, you know, or English, Caucasian. She could actually tell you, look, shared experiences that I've been through allow me to tell you not to worry about those things. And that, you know, created that, which is really great for you. So if we take it back to young Raees, sat down in the classroom, looking outside the window, and you're like, oh man, I want to be X when I'm older. What was that X? What was that thing for you?
I think, to be honest, I did always want to be a sort of business owner. I didn't care what the business was. What I liked doing was coming up with ideas and implementing them. Even for me as well, if we jump from young Raees to kind of A-level Raees, you know, I didn't even really want to go to university, but I didn't know what options were available to me. I think nowadays there's a lot more going on. Don't get me wrong, I'm not super old in the sense of that wouldn't have been totally available to me, but had I done maybe a little bit more research, probably would have gone for something like an apprenticeship and got those hands-on sort of experiences straight away. But, you know, looking out the classroom window in year 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is, I certainly wanted to run my own business, and that comes back down as well to the fact that my dad is running his own business as well, and has always done so. So I didn't really know any different. What I did know, though, we skipped through a few years as well. When I did any internship or even a part-time job, I did a part-time job in a clothing store. What I found was I was very target driven. Even if it was like, make sure you get as many signups to our email subscription. They used to have that sort of thing at Topman, and I would be all over that. I'd find ways to get more than anyone else. And for me, targets were a big thing. And whether I was getting paid more for it actually never made any difference. What I found was I just like growing things, and I like taking an idea and making it bigger. So once I got away from being 16, going into an internship, going to uni, I did my whole degree. And I'll be honest, it didn't interest me to learn all those formulas that I probably wouldn't have used, and to this day haven't probably used. But what I did find was the sort of drive to create something, come up with ideas, look for problems in the world. And that's what I love about what we do in the Muslim community. We have such a big community. I think it's 4 million and growing in the UK. And you'd be talking billions, and I think it's about 2 billion or touching 2 billion in the world. You've got such a big community, fastest growing religion in the world, but we still find ourselves faced with so many restrictions in daily life. I'm sure you've come across that with your travels, your heritage, and all the rest of it. Being a Muslim in the West is not super easy. We're very lucky, don't get me wrong. We're very lucky to be here, to be away from any other negative sort of consequence or situation. But there's so much we can do as a community to make lives easy for ourselves. And then you have a look as well at the sort of Muslim-oriented countries that have taken it to the next step in terms of being a little bit more westernized, like the UAE. Qatar as well is a really good example of it at the moment with the World Cup. But people are looking at those countries to say, what a nice life to lead over there, being easy to be a Muslim. But we should look back into the UK, back into the Western countries like Canada, America, and see what we can do to make that the case for anyone new coming in. So the likes of yourself, my dad coming as first gen immigrants, they never have that problem again. I know that we've moved a lot further from there, but personally speaking, Raees back in year 7, year 8 was not thinking about these big problems. What he was thinking about were problems that should be solved and could be turned into a business. And I'll probably be very honest with you on that. Is I would probably a little bit arrogant in the sense of I would be looking for profit driven businesses in that sense. And the years that have come from me going from, like I say, a very non-Muslim oriented area, so not densely populated with Muslims, and then moving to Leicester, where I'll be honest, anyone who hasn't been or doesn't go often, I highly recommend they go, because the community there is just fantastic, mashallah. Whether you're Muslim or not, by the way. And meeting a certain type of person, a certain caliber of person, and then keeping that company, that's what changes your ideals and your values in terms of where you want to take your life. And personally, for me, like I said, I've never wanted to move away from running my own business. And what I did find was if you could run your own business that holds value for the most important thing, which is your Islam, your religion, and help the community doing it. So, it almost becomes a legacy sort of impact. That is absolutely top tier. You cannot beat that. If you can achieve something like that, similar to what you're doing with Muslim Amir, the amount of Muslim business owners that you're helping and empowering, the impact of and the Passover impact of everyone that they speak to as a result of speaking to you, that's insane. The compound sort of benefit that people are getting to that. So when I left uni, or coming towards the end of leaving uni, maybe my last year, I started thinking about this idea for Amazing, which would be a platform that brings together Muslims as consumers and brings together Muslims as business owners, because we know Muslims as business owners, we're very entrepreneurial. We're really, really good. And that might be out of the fact of having to have less of an opportunity than those in the past, and having to make our own opportunities. But, I say thank God for something like that, because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have such an entrepreneurial community. So what we want to do at Amazing is bring those two together. And that's the sort of idea I got at the end of university that eventually turned into Amazing. And for me, year 8 Raees or year 7 Raees would have probably said, I've gone a lot further than I was expecting to in terms of just running a profit-ridden business, now running a value and legacy-ridden business, inshallah.
you know, subhanAllah, I'm really happy you use that word, because I don't want to leave a legacy. I want to live my legacy. I always say that.
100%.
You know, leaving a legacy is all amazing, but if I don't get to see the legacy that I built and get to experience it and live it, then, you know, it's all great, but I want to kind of experience it and live it. And I think, you know, with Amazing Muslim Amir, we're doing, like I said, there's a crossover there with what we want to aim to do and how we want to benefit the ummah. And alhamdulillah, you know, even with the LinkedIn Muslim Network, which I started recently, it has that idea of connecting Muslims together to be able to network and you know, alhamdulillah. And I think, you know, like that what you touched upon was really important. I think you go from the young Raees or Raees in Arabic, and you go to, you know, you studied economics, which is actually really suitable with the way that your brain works, because, you know, you were already looking at profit driven stuff and, you know, supply demand, why we should price this way, that way, the way that economics works, which I think is really a useful tool to have when you want to run a business, studying economics. Which is ironic, because at university, that was one of my units that I was really, really poor in. But it's because I had no background in economics before university. And then all of a sudden I'm sat in university in a unit, in a lecture, learning something that I have no experience in. And obviously you can't start from zero at uni in economics. You have to start from like year 10. Anyway, that's a side story. But you had obviously a profit-driven mind. But I mean, what I've found in business, maybe you can sort of, you know, correlate with this or understand it. When I started looking to give value rather than looking at my bottom line, and I started giving way more value to my audience and to just people that were engaging with my content, I started making more money than I did when I was just chasing the pounds.
The byproduct, isn't it?
So like now, even if I don't make money, which is obviously not the ideal goal, but you want to make money as a business owner, but even if I'm not making money and I'm providing value, I know that it's just delayed sort of gratification or delayed results, right? Because I know just if I give enough value to enough people, eventually, you know, people will start either connecting me with people, or people will start selling my services for me. They'll be like, oh, I know Osama, he's Muslim in me, he does leadership stuff. I honestly highly recommend him. Even if you haven't taken my service, just because I've given you some sort of value before, or we've had that conversation. I mean, just for example, just before you came on the podcast, you mentioned a guest that we recently had on. And all of a sudden now people are starting to talk about things. And, you know, the purpose of the podcast doesn't make me any money. It takes time. You know, I've got a ton of stuff I have to edit. But for me, it's value. Like I get value from you, the viewers will get value, and inshallah, you will get value as well, because then, you know, delayed results where people watch this maybe in a year's time, find it amazing, sign up to one of your clients that are on there. So, you know, these things are really important. And I think, you know, subhanAllah, when we're children and we're looking outside the windows thinking about our future, we never thought we were going to do the things we do now. And I think you said something that was really, really profound, which is you're now changing the world. Like you're looking at bigger problems. When we're 7, year 8, I'm just thinking about the corner shop. Are they going to have the sweets that I'm looking for? Do you know what I mean? Sending that song via Bluetooth or whatever. So now, like, we're trying to fix problems for the ummah. Like, that's incredible. If we take a moment and just understand how big that is and what we're trying to do, I think, you know, any young us would be proud of who we've become. Speaking of, you know, business and changing the world and everything, what has been your biggest achievement in business so far?
Oh, that's a really good question. Biggest achievement. You know what I would say? I think if you rewinded to 2020, when we were still doing amazing, it was in a bit of a different guise and a different sort of package. I think it was a good space marketplace back then. And it was just me and my co-founder Ismail. And any time there was a technical problem, it would be a meltdown trying to figure out what we would do, how we would figure it out. I'd be in the middle of work and say, oh, look, the website's been hacked. It's showing all sorts of crazy stuff when you now log on to Amazing. And we thought we were the only 2 people that could fix that problem. And I'd say to this day, and I think it will always be the case, the biggest achievement that I've had in business so far is building a team that is capable of their own skill set, in the sense of I'm not the smartest person in the room, and I'm so grateful for that there are way more skilled people on my team that are able to deliver results or even give me ideas and absolutely enhance the sort of business model, the idea, the sort of way in which we work as a company now. And I can say that, you know, now we've got 5 people on the core team, 30 creatives working underneath us as well. If I switch back 2 years ahead of time, it really was just me and Ismail. And we were sat there in our pajamas at 1 a.m. trying to figure out how we fix these problems on the site, which now if I gave to the team, they'd have it fixed in 5 minutes. But building a team that understand the vision, that understand the greater goal. So like we said before, that it's not all just profit driven, but there is a business model behind it. And doing something even out of hours, having that determination. So when it got close to launch, you know, the amount of hours we put into it, going into the early morning every single day. I didn't once hear a complaint. I just heard shared enthusiasm and shared disbelief if something went wrong. You know, it was that same level of commitment from everyone. So building a team that has the same level of commitment, the same ideology, the same belief in the ultimate mission, that for me can't be replicated with the wrong set of people. It can only be done with the right people. And the fact that I managed to find them, or that they found me, alhamdulillah, I don't think I could ever beat that sort of level of achievement, personally speaking.
MashaAllah, that's amazing. And just to touch on that, I mean, when I do my leadership consulting in businesses, the first thing you want to do is align your team on your mission and your vision. Because when you have a goal you're working towards together, number one, sharing that goal with the team makes that vision their vision. Number two, when you share the values of your culture or the company that you're building, it allows them to engrave themselves in that culture, aligned with your values to achieve your mission. And I would even go one step further. There's the OKR method, which is objectives and key results. If you share that with your team, like the targets, like you said, you were driven by targets and not necessarily for the incentives. You were just somebody who was target orientated. So these things help. So for example, in one of my other businesses at the moment, we shared the revenue goals for what we want to achieve with the whole team. We weren't shy to admit that this is how much we want to make. And it gave everyone that core objective of like, okay, this is how much we need to make collectively. We smashed the target because everyone became a part of that. It's not like hidden, like, okay, everybody, I want you to make this much money, and it's like all selective and individual. It's all, we're all one, right? And ironically speaking, you said they found you, you found them. It's not just about finding the right people. It comes down to you and your leadership traits, because you didn't just find the right people. You shared your mission or your dream with these people, and they got enthusiastic about your dream, right? So it's not just about finding the right people. Sometimes people don't share your dream, and that's fine. But when you find people that share your dream and are as enthusiastic as you about your dream, it comes down to you, because the way that you positioned yourself with your dream is amazing. So the purpose of me saying that is for you to also give yourself a pat on the back a bit, that alhamdulillah, that you've managed to grow this team right now. And I think you just said 30 creatives under the 5 core team. So that I didn't expect that number. That's mashallah, that's huge. I mean, given where we were just when you spoke a couple of months ago, I think you've grown exponentially there. So Allahumma zid wa barik, that's amazing news. And I think that's definitely an achievement to celebrate. And obviously you and Ismail have done really well as the co-founders to take it to where you have. And I know firsthand how challenging it is running a business in the early stages and trying to do everything on your own. And I think a quick tip for everybody out there, and as a reminder for myself as well, outsource as much as you can. Anything you're not good at, either outsource it to a freelancer or an independent sort of company, or hire to cover your weaknesses and focus on your strengths. So don't waste time doing things that you're not good at, because it's just a waste of time. Take it from me. I've wasted hours, days, weeks, months doing things I'm not good at. And in the end product isn't great. And I've wasted a lot of time rather than doing what I'm good at. So, barakallahu feek. Now, we spoke about your biggest achievement in business so far. I want to know what's been your biggest lesson, either in life or in business, or if you want to answer both, you can. So share it. If you can share that with us, that would be great.
That's actually another really good question, actually. With my situation at work in general, I do amazing. I'll be on amazing full time in July. But as I alluded to before, I went straight into the business, which is chemicals, water treatment, and all the rest of it. And one thing that I've always had be the case is largely for especially that sector is you're normally the youngest person in the room, and you're typically less listened to because they they sort of imply that less experience, which is totally true, by the way. But there are the odd exception in terms of age versus the value that comes out of someone's mouth. And whilst I don't necessarily place myself in that exception, there are plenty of exceptions that I've met that are either younger than me, slightly older than me, or the same age. So I would personally say that age makes no difference. But on that point, I've been introduced, alhamdulillah, I've been introduced to some very important people, very credible people that come from the likes of Apple, Rothschild, and all the rest of it when they come in for any form of pitch or investment or consultation. And what I've come to realize is, despite pedigree and despite experience, despite who you are as a person, even if you feel that you're less experienced than that person on paper is always just paper until you meet them. A big lesson for me was you shouldn't build up this sort of character of a person before you've met them. Because what I found on many occasions was either they're extremely down to earth and that they're just as normal as you and me and they breathe the same air, and they're not some crazy, high level, really intense investor or work person, business person that's going to be putting every idea that you've got down, not like that at all. But also have a lot more confidence in yourself. If you have ideas, don't be scared to ask, don't be scared to share them in the room. But the biggest lesson when it comes to that room full of very experienced people, much older than you people, is don't be scared to ask a question that you think is stupid. Because 9 times out of 10, every other person in that room is probably thinking the same thing. And they will normally respect the person that asked the question because they were thinking the same thing. And I was taught that very early on because people knew that I was young. I still am when it comes to those conversations. And I am no longer scared to ask that question. At first, I would hesitate and then ask the question after and say, by the way, I didn't actually know what you meant by this. No, good thing, because I didn't know what you meant by that either. And the more I started hearing that, when someone just said to me, look, Raees, you should, my name has been totally whitewashed here. You should just ask the question as you hear it, and don't be scared, because if they answer you in a way that you don't like or seems demeaning, then that's not the type of person that you want to know anyway. You don't want to spend time, you don't want to waste your time with that person. The biggest lesson I've found is don't judge someone on paper purely by what you read on paper. So certainly don't build them bigger than they are. Always have faith in your own ability to be able to have earned that time in that room, and never be scared to ask what you think is a stupid question, because 9 times out of 10 it will gain you the respect that you deserve in that room.
I mean, there's a huge power in asking questions, and I'm really happy you shared that lesson, because in sales is the art of asking, right? Because I can't solve a problem in sales if I don't know what the problem is, and how can I know the problem without asking questions? So it's the same thing in anything. I mean, it's really important, because I, as a leader myself from my team, I'm always like, ask me as many questions as you want. Right? For me, I'm more happy to get 1,000 questions and answer those 1,000 questions and make sure that you are aware of what's expected from you, what I want from you, what you should do, than you not to ask, go away and do something incorrectly due to misunderstanding, and then we have to solve that problem, which is way more amplified than if you just ask the question. So, and I think age definitely doesn't matter. I mean, obviously it depends on personality traits and what experiences you've had. I mean, I've always been someone that's sort of very confident, alhamdulillah, and outspoken maybe. So I'll always say things. I mean, I remember when I first got promoted to a manager as a restaurant manager in Chelsea Football Club, in the hospitality side. I sat down in one of the first manager meetings. I was 19 years old. And I challenged the manager who'd managed me for some years straight away in the first meeting. Because I said to him, I was like, look, your management style didn't work with me, and here's why it didn't work. And what you just said in this meeting is completely incorrect. And I think you should change your approach. And he tried to shout at me, which was one of his traits. He was always right. So then the area manager looked at him and said, actually, Osama's right. you know, you should do that. Now, that maybe isn't asking a question, but it was me sharing, you know, from my experience, how you could become a better manager. And I didn't look at his age or my age. I just knew, because it didn't work with me. So I'm sure there's others that it doesn't work with.
Yeah, 100%.
But then I shared that. And then from that moment on, because the area manager straight away supported me, let's say that gave me the confidence to be like, yeah, it doesn't matter about age or who you are. And I mean, you know, the restaurant I worked with the players and their wives. So I was working with like high-end people. And I had to be up to the task. So from the deep end, I was always thrown into areas where like, okay, yeah, I'm dealing with Eden Hazard and, you know, Fernando Torres and whoever, John Terry, but I've got to be up to the task and I've got to be able to speak. And when I saw that I get respected for speaking rather than shying away, it's that same lesson that you had of, yeah, you know, we should be able to speak, and we should, age is just a number. And what people sometimes misunderstand is, yeah, they might have all the value, the knowledge, the wisdom, the experience, the expertise, all of that. But sometimes with the way you ask a question or with the way you make a point or a statement, one, you refresh their memory about something they might have actually forgotten about. Two, your question might inspire them to answer or think differently, because the way that you asked the question or what the question was about is actually just disrupted their thinking, and they're like, oh, do you know what? I never thought of it that way. But that's a good question, actually. Okay, yeah, no. Do you know what? Sometimes they even say, do you know what? Give me a day, I'll get back to you. Because they actually have to go and think about it. They're like, that's such a good question. I actually want to go think about it properly. So I think, you know, I think that's an important lesson. Jazakallah khair for sharing that. I think that's really, really, really powerful. Now, I know you're young, Raees. You don't have to disclaim your age, but if you could go back to 20-year-old Raees and sit him down in a room with you right now. Just quick tip, actually, not a tip, but ironically, for anyone that doesn't know, Raees in Arabic sort of means a leader or someone in a leadership position. So that's really nice. Quick tangent there. But yeah, if you could sit down with your 20-year-old self and speak to them, what would you advise them? What would you advise yourself, who's 20 years old, if you were to be able to sit in a room with them right now?
I have to break it down. I'd say a lot of don't waste time, don't wait. If I went back to 20 years old, what would I have been? I would have just been finishing uni, I think. And a lot of that time, I was sat there sort of twiddling my thumbs. When I first joined that family business as well, like I said, I'm scared to answer the phone. I wasn't scared to answer the phone, but you know, you don't want to answer the phone and say the wrong thing. So don't be scared to just start and do what you're thinking about. Because as I mentioned before, when we were coming up with Amazing, which is now, you know, the go-to platform for Muslim businesses or Muslim friendly businesses, shall I say, and Muslim consumers in the UK, that took a lot longer to build purely because I just didn't start early enough. You know, I had the idea, I maybe sat on my hands for too long. So one thing I would certainly say to me is that, you know, at the age of 20, 5 years ago now, is, and that's a long time, by the way, 5 years, even 1 year, it makes a massive difference. Don't slow down. Don't just think about the idea. If you've got an idea, put it to paper. Yeah, once soon as something hits paper, it becomes a lot more real. When it's in your head, it's in your peripheral. It's not quite there. It's not focused on. I say this to everyone I work with, everyone on the team. If you've got something that's important, you write it down. And I'm not saying just write it down and then gaze at it and admire it from afar, but it then gives you the sort of apparatus to do something with it. So for me, you know, I came up with this concept, and don't get me wrong, we pivoted, you know, later down the months and the years of how we got to where we are today. But if I had started earlier, I possibly could be having this conversation with you 2 years ago. You know what I mean? 2 years is a long time. So I'm very lucky that the space that we're in, possibly competitors or whoever they are out there, maybe in different countries, either make the same mistake as I did or are slow in terms of doing it. But that's how I like to think now, is that there is someone breathing down my neck who's potentially ready to do what I'm doing better than me. That's why with every sort of decision that I've made today, I don't just make it quickly and rashly, but I make that decision quickly with the team to make sure that we iterate and we get it out there fast, and then we keep ideating and getting it out there and making the product as good as we can. So number one rule to Raees 5 years ago, just do it. It sounds like the Nike slogan, right? But it is. It's just do it, because you sit on your hands for too long, you'll become that person that writes the message, and says, I had that idea, I was going to do it. But there are so many other factors that come into it, whether you find the right person to work with, because you can't do everything by yourself, whether you find the right sort of software or the right sort of journey which enables you to be able to do what you're doing. But the first step has to be to just do it. If you do it and you fail, then that's fine. Fail early. That's my next step. Is for Raees, don't be scared of failing. So you've got to do it. But then the next thing in someone's mind, probably at 20 years old or younger, or even older, let's be honest, is if I do it, what happens if I fail? Who cares? If you fail, you move on to the next one, but at least you can say you did it. The worst feeling you can have as a person, I've been there, right, is not doing it and thinking I could have done it. And then seeing someone who did have that mentality and did it and failed early or succeeded later, and then saying I could have been that person. That's not a good place to be. So if you're 20, if you're at whatever age out there listening to this podcast, and you've got an idea, within reason, get it started, get it on a piece of paper, get it written down, get it understood, and do not be scared to fail early. Failing early is a good thing. It's a lesson that you can take. And if I'd known that at 20 years old, I probably would have been, like I say, 2-3 years ahead of time right there, for sure.
I think that's super important. I think, again, I always tell people to take the first step. I always tell people to use pen and paper to write down what's in their mind to help them achieve clarity. And I think it's true because, for example, I started business from when I was 16, even before. I was always hustling. And I'm now 28, pushing on to 29 very soon. And the experience that I've gained from the failures, like you said, failing early in business, has now allowed me to reach a stage now where I always wanted to be in the position that I'm in now at 40. That was always my goal, to be, a consultant, a motivational speaker at 40 and empowering people. I'm now doing it at 28. And that's because of the failures early on, the successes early on, and just taking that, first step and doing it. I remember during university, we had to have a placement year. And everybody else went and worked their corporate jobs or looked for corporate jobs. I worked my business.
Yeah.
For a year. And it was so fun because I was in control of my time. I was still at university per se, doing, my thing. And, it just allowed me to learn certain things. And I always had this drive to, build myself. So I think it's a great advice to just do it. I think I would add to it, if you were to sit with him, I think maybe also, it's okay to twiddle your thumbs and make your mistakes, because if you didn't do that, you wouldn't have learned that lesson now.
No, that's the failing.
Exactly. And now, for example, you're more willing to take risks, even if they don't work out, because you just know the results are going to come. I'm confident they're going to come. Any blips that we go through now, and especially because, like you said, when 2 years ago you and Ismail were going through the challenges and you get hacked, you learn that I can overcome any challenge really and truly in business. And if I can't fix it, I can hire somebody who can fix the problem. there's a solution for everything if we can find it. So I think, just do it. It's a great slogan. I think it's super important. And I think anybody watching this, if you've got an idea, if you're looking to get started, then do it. If you need help with that, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Raees. There's many people out there that can mentor you, help you, and there's tools and resources out there that didn't exist 5 years ago. So someone like me now was amazing. It's amazing that they have that platform to uplift others. And Muslim Amir, we're all about empowerment and empowering you and enriching you and enlightening you for a better, brighter future, inshallah. So what would you say is one business tip that's super important for Raees, that's super important to you? What's that one business tip?
That's a really good question. Personally speaking, I'd like to think I'm quite finance oriented in terms of the way I make decisions. So I would not have had any of the sort of experience in finance. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a chartered accountant or ACA or ACCA at the end of my name, but I'd like to say I've got a decent amount of experience in understanding how P&L, balance sheet, cash flow all work. I would say to anyone, that sort of advice of knowing that sort of skill of having that really, really shapes the way in which you think when you have a business idea. And I'm talking very startup sort of oriented when I'm talking like this, purely because I've had a lot of people come to me, even me in the early days, and go, don't get me wrong, amazing was not my first idea. I had a lot of failed ones before then that sounded like great ideas and probably had a really cool name, but was there really any business model behind it? So what I would say is try to understand the basics, and it sounds really, really boring. Let's be honest, it sounds really, really boring to learn, accounting concepts like a profit and loss and a balance sheet. And really, all you do need to know is that profit and loss, in my opinion, because if you can understand where your turnover, your sales, your gross profit, and how big your purchases are going to be and what your overheads might potentially look like, you can understand that, you can really mold how your business is going to look in the future and how you can stay profitable, or when you will become profitable, because for certain industries and certain sectors, you won't get profitable till maybe 3 years down the line. But if you know there's an end game getting you to that point where things get to the end of the rainbow, then that's a lot better. If you go in blind, and a lot of people do this, they don't do that little bit. And I'll tell you now, it is a little bit of research. It doesn't take a lot to understand very small parts of a profit and loss. If you can understand that, you can structure your business very, very well in terms of pitching it to other people, because that's one of the biggest questions people will give you when you do start your business. What's your business model? And if you can understand that and how that relates back to the understanding of accounting concepts, even very basic ones, then it's going to be very clear that numbers don't lie. And for me, that's probably one of the biggest things I could tell anyone. Numbers never lie. And that's how businesses work. You can't get to a point of always doing high turnover and low profit, because cash flow will start to be affected. You can start understanding these things from an early doors idea. YouTube, for me, was my best friend. I did an economics degree. If I can tell you now, anyone listening, sounds like I did a lot of maths, right? I did. It was a lot of useless maths, not day-to-day maths in terms of what we know about running a business today. YouTube gives you absolutely everything you need in terms of understanding it in five-minute segments. So my top business tip to someone looking to start a business or who's thinking about starting a business is understand those concepts, which will probably take you 15 minutes at max. I'm not saying you have to have an economics degree or anything. You could be totally fresh off, no sort of knowledge. You could have done a whole geography degree or no degree at all, and you will understand that. If you can understand that, it will shape how you then decide to plan your business moving forward. And inshallah, that will give you the structure you need to be able to provide or to make a successful business moving forward. That would be one of the foundational pieces for sure.
Again, super important. Numbers don't lie, as you said. And I think for any business owner or any entrepreneur looking to start up or whatever, numbers obviously are a big deal. They're make or break in businesses. And many businesses failed. I had a failed business because of my numbers. I, funnily enough, had a business plan, didn't stick to the business plan. Had I stuck to the business plan, the business would probably still exist right now, because it was a realistic business plan. I'd done year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. I, in that business plan, said I'm not going to hire anybody full time until year 3. I got super excited, made a lot of money in the first 6 months, went and hired 2 people. 6 months later, we're bankrupt. All the money we generated had gone on employees, didn't generate enough revenue in the long run to cover their costs. And then we ended up closing 2020, January, which was good because it was an events business, and then COVID hit. So alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah that happened. But it taught me one of the biggest lessons, that employing people was not an issue if, number one, obviously you have the resource to. Number 2, you know exactly what position you're going to give them and that the return on investment is going to be. And number 3, you want to make sure that in that situation, you're looking at it. So I made the business plan because in the plan, I planned for everything, right? The finances is a core part of that plan. Not sticking to that plan and not amending the plan either, key point here, right? If you're going to change something, the business plan can always change. But I didn't change the plan. I just jumped from year 1 to year 3 straight away without the revenue that we'd aimed to equate. Which was really unfortunate because we actually smashed year 1's revenue targets, but then the expenses just killed us. So Same thing here. Understanding profit and loss, your balance sheet is super important, but also understanding where you're at and not jumping ahead. I would just add to that tip is that don't jump ahead. You know, your numbers will tell you exactly where you should be. And if you, for whatever reason, make more money or less money, you just want to amend and, you know, move in the right direction, inshallah. So that's another great tip. Jazakallah khair, bro. So obviously as Muslims, there's many people that have morning routines. Some may have evening routines. Some just have a routine during the day. It might be a work routine, some form of routine. What does Raees have for routines? If you don't have a routine, that's completely fine as well. But if you have a routine, what routine do you have?
That's a really good question. I say that after every question. It really is a very good question every time I ask it. Mashallah. So on that point, I've done a lot of research, probably because I've got way too much time on my hands in the early days, but on how to get a really good routine. And I read a book called Miracle Morning. I think you've read it as well. And it really lays it out very simply about how to have basically underlying feature, if anyone who hasn't read it and listened to the podcast, is if you set yourself up early in the day, you set your entire day up to be productive, right? And as Muslims, I think we are programmed to have a very productive day on that basis, because the likes of Fajr is relatively early, at the moment pretty late to be honest, but if you catch it when it actually starts rather than when it ends, then you could probably have a decently productive day. Now, for me personally, what I like to do, and this is on a good day, like at the moment, it's stupidly cold, so it's a little bit harder to get out of bed, but on a good day, what I do is two things. I write a list of what I want daily out of my day. So I have something on a sort of app that I use called Todoist, and I call it Daily Wins. So part of that routine off the top of my head, one will be pray Fajr, read Quran, journal the day, and then I'll tell you when all of this comes into play. And then another one I've got is speak to someone outside of my comfort zone. So today, doing a podcast with yourself, I'll be able to tick that one off, right? But what I tend to do is write these ones down. It comes back to that point. If you write it down, you actualize it. And that's something I've just understood from the way I work. And then obviously that's been validated in books that I've read later down the line, like Atomic Habits and stuff like that. And again, even it sounds like I'm name dropping a load of books. I don't read all of those books. I either watch the summaries, or there's really good apps out there that summarize it in like 15 pages. So I tried to make sure that my time is really, really well spent in terms of learning and doing. So for me, let's say today's the routine. I'll wake up probably about 5:30 at the moment. On a good day when, for example, Fajr is not so late, I'll wake up at 5, so I know I'll catch Fajr straight away. And then I read Fajr straight away. Then I'll read a little bit of Quran. If I don't read it in the morning, I'll read it in the evening before I go to bed. And then I will journal either in the morning or in the evening, depending on when I've missed it. I typically do that in the evening before bed though, and I'll explain why when we get to that point as well. And then after that, I'll go to the gym. So after I pray Fajr, I'll go to the gym. And the gym, or any form of exercise, is really, really good because it clears your head away from anything that you're thinking about and gets you ready for the day. And you feel like you've done something. But just a quick point as well before I jump to the gym, before I leave, it sounds really stupid and really small, and some people might have seen this YouTube video, so I always make the bed. And I'm sure some people have seen this before, but if you make the bed, for those that don't know, it kind of guarantees that you've done something in the day that you can come back to at the end of your day and know that your bed has been made and that it's ready for you to get into again. If you could leave your bed unmade, it symbolizes the fact that you haven't got the structure from the beginning of the day, and when you get to the end of the day, that structure's still not there. So that's another thing I try to make sure I do. And then getting past gym and going to the gym and doing that for 45 minutes to an hour, is I come back and I start work. Now, personally for me, let's say that's 7 o'clock, I start work at 8:30, so there's 1.5 hours there that I can work on Amazing, for example, whilst I'm working my full-time job. So that's a decent amount of time to get like a solid amount of deep work done. And from there, I would have already had a set of tasks that I know I need to do in the morning, which I would have planned the night before. Again, because my time is so limited working in a family business, but I make sure every hour that I do is useful. It's actually contributing to the company moving forward, and getting us to that point where, you know, eventually, inshallah, we'll be there full time. So I then start my normal work day and routine. And what I'd like to do in the evening is go for a walk for 40 minutes. I tend to, this is something I learned off a TED talk as well. Again, all of these things are like 5 minutes to learn and to hear. and to actually reciprocate and do. But apparently the art of doing nothing will help you solve everything. So when you have a problem and you sit in silence or you walk in silence as I do, program your brain to actually solve problems that are in the back of your head. So if you're not listening to like music, background music, whatever it is, or even just the headphones for a podcast, unless it's this podcast, and then you get to the point of solving the problem in your head. So, for example, let's say my problem is how do I achieve, I don't know, 1,000 users by the end of January? If you have that question in your head and you're walking, that's a lot of time, 40 minutes to go trying to figure out that idea. So your brain will take different lanes of trying to get there. So for me, in the evening, that's what I tried to do. Obviously, it's snowing at the moment, so I've been a little bit shy on that one. But if I don't go out for that walk, I will sit in, not in meditation or anything like that, but silence for the day, maybe for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just to think about those questions. I tell you now, it really works. I thought it was a load of rubbish when I heard it on TEDx, but it genuinely really works. So that's what I will do there. And then obviously I'll have my meal and all the rest of it. And what I tend to do, I have something on my phone where it cuts my apps at 9:30 for all my social media apps. One thing I have found is that when you're in LinkedIn, social media, whatever it is, even TikTok, you consume a lot of your time just consuming content and looking at other people's lives, which can be a little bit disheartening when you're kind of in the thick of it, whether you're building something, whether you're working. Social media will always find a way to make you compare yourself to others, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing, right? But personally speaking, it's probably not the best thing when you're trying to focus on yourself. So what I tend to do is cut my phone, and I've got like a wellness setting on my phone where it cuts it at 9:30, where I don't receive emails, I don't receive notifications, and I have time just to sit down with family and properly relax. So we get to 9:30, then 10:30 I get to bed, and then from there I'll read a little bit of Quran to finish the day. I'll journal. Now that comes back to the point of why I journal, especially in the evening. Now, if you've got a lot of things going on in your day, what you tend to do when I journal is say 3 things that I'm grateful for. So, alhamdulillah, for my health, my wife, my the food I have on the table. Because we're born into this life, right? It makes you think about these things, and then you journal just for that day, just what happened in that day. Don't journal about what you're going to do tomorrow. Just journal what happened in that day. And if there's a problem or a challenge that you're going through in that day, what that helps to do is put it down on paper again, actualize it, and leave it there so that when you go to sleep, it's a little bit easier to not have your mind racing about that problem again. And then when you get to the next day of journaling, if you've done your 10-minute walk and it's been great, then you found the solution. You can write about the solution, about why yesterday is no longer a challenge anymore. So that's typically where I'm at when I'm doing that routine. That's on a good day, right? But the reason I put it on a to-do list, like I said, I use an app called Todoist, and there's loads of apps out there. I do it because the feeling of pushing done or complete is a great feeling to say no more tasks for the day. Like yesterday, for example, I missed my day of reading Quran, so I read it in the morning, but I didn't get to press done. I think it's there. It was there saying overdue, and I thought to myself, I don't want overdue. So today I'm going to read double the amount of pages and make up for it. And if you do that, and you have an overall goal to finish the Quran by the end of the year, those little daily tasks work for your overall objectives. And for me, one of my goals for the year is to finish the Quran by the end of the year. And we're on the 13th, so I've got a lot of work to do.
May Allah make it easy for you, bro. May Allah make it easy for you. And Jazakallah khair, bro. That was really inspirational, actually. And subhanAllah, a lot of the things that you said are things that we should all try to implement. And I think me, myself, I try and implement them. And sometimes I'm very challenged with them. Sometimes it's a bit easier to do them. But I think, that is an ideal routine, what you just said. And I think a lot of the things that you said about your routine make perfect sense. I mean, as you rightly said, Allah sets us up for a perfect day because of Fajr. And we know that the blessings of the morning, that Allah puts barakah in the morning, especially if you stay awake after Fajr, to read in the morning. There's an ayah that says that Quran is, everything that you read of Quran in the morning at Fajr time is recorded or mashhuda. So it's someone's present, one of the malaika present. Obviously we always have malaika there. But and I think what's super important about routine, it's like you just said, it's that structure. So you doing your bed before you go to the gym is not something silly. you know, anybody watching this that doesn't make their bed in the morning. I mean, I was somebody that didn't always make my bed in the morning. I'll admit this. And then when I started making my bed, it honestly just felt amazing, because anytime I'd walk into my room, it's not messy. And the thing is, when you do your bed, you feel like, okay, well, I've done my bed. The rest of the room needs to be tidy, like my bed is. Otherwise, it's like a juxtaposition. Like the bed's perfect, but then like everything else is everywhere, and you're like, no, it doesn't work, right? And then it's like you said, when you come home. So when I come home from the gym and my bed's done, it just gives me that much of it, and it's so true. It's such a simple task, but it feels like you've ticked something off the list. Like my bed's done. My bed's done. So I have no other reason to be, you know, down. Today, for example, I love having cold showers. I think they're a great way for me to start the day. Today, I didn't have a cold shower when I first woke up, whatever. And then, you know, just before we jumped on this call, or there was another call before this, but just before I started work, I was like, you know what, I need to have a cold shower. You know, it's not something that I haven't done it, because we're in winter now. I haven't done it for the last, you know, whatever days. So let me just do it. And subhanAllah, as soon as I went in and did the cold shower, it just gave me this energy, because cold showers work for me. I love them. So it was like, oh my God, yeah, I'm ready to tackle anything in the day, right? So these small things that we do really do set up our day. And I think one of the things that I've not been able to do is journal. I used to color. At the end of the day, I'd have like 15 minutes that I'd block out, and I'm really rubbish at art. I was not good at drawing. But what I do, so if you see my book of what I draw, you'd think it's a 3-year-old just coloring in. What ends up happening? What ends up happening here is, obviously, it's silence when I'm doing it. I'm allowing my brain to just release in the form of drawing, which is one of the ways that is recommended, along with journaling, to release whatever you've got going on. So depending on what colors I've used and what I've actually put on the paper, I start to calculate that, okay, why did I draw that? What is it that, so if I'm using like dark colors and things that look like it's all over the place, I'm like, okay, there's something that I'm challenged with. And then I sit there and I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, what could it be? What did I do today that's made me draw this? What's upset me? When I draw bright colors and things are connected and it looks nice, or as nice as it can for a 3-year-old's drawing, I'm like, okay, cool. Like I've clearly solved problems today. I had conversations with the right people. I've done something that makes me feel good. But actually journaling is something I've always wanted to get into. And I think after hearing what you just said today, I might try it out. Because I don't journal in the sense of like, what did I do today? Like I will start my day with writing my lists and writing statements of like positive reaffirmation. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I want to make, you know, X amount of change in the world. I want to impact this many people. I want to make this much money. I want to, you know, it's like sort of daily targets. But journaling at the end of the day, I like that. Going for walks, I love going for walks. I mean, like, for example, when I go to the masjid, I use that as my time to walk, because it's a bit hard now. Obviously, I'm recently married, and trying to get time alone to go for a walk is not like, what are you doing? Why are you going on your own? So when you get to the masjid, it's nice. So I don't usually go with my phone, right?
Yeah.
And I like to leave my house with no phone, no wallet, nothing. Just if I go with my keys, that's, you know, it's a good day. And I just go. And it's to allow myself to just think, because on the way to the masjid, it's 10 minutes there, 10 minutes back. I'll either go by walking here in Jordan, or in the UK, I go by bike. I don't like to drive. One, it's a form of exercise. So in case I haven't exercised that day, or even if I have exercised, I'm getting extra exercise in. And two, it allows my thoughts to just flow. Because I'm not someone who really listens to anything on the way. So I like that time to, like you just said, the art of nothing, of silence, actually solves a lot of problems. And I realize if I haven't done those things, it ends up disrupting my sleep. So let's say if I haven't gone to the masjid today or for the week, and I've been praying at home, I haven't gone for any walks, I haven't done any exercise. When I go to sleep now, it's like you said, my thoughts are just racing. It's like I'm challenging myself to just, because obviously you haven't had time to deconstruct. You haven't had time to really take in what's happened, the process. So your mind's now processing, it's putting things in the bin, it's putting things in the right categories, it's, you know, moving everything around. So your brain's like, and you're there like, okay, I can't sleep. Now I'm up till 4 a.m. just because my brain won't let me sleep. And then and now I'm trying to wake up for Fajr and go to work the next day, and everything, it's a compound effect, isn't it? So I think, you know, a huge, your routine is hugely inspirational. And anybody watching this, along with myself, I think we should try this routine out, and, you know, share in the comments what you guys think about it. So speaking of, routines, challenges, and you know, the things that we may go through, what would you say is something that you are challenged with currently that you're still trying to overcome, or what has been your biggest challenge that you overcame?
Ooh, something that I'm challenged with that I'm trying to overcome. As much as I talk about that sort of routine, right? The routine is there as an apparatus for me to try and be better with my time management. I would like to say that my time management is pretty good, but working in the family business, which is, you know, anyone that does work in family business that's watching this, they'll understand that it's not a wage, it's no normal sort of 9 to 5. It's a livelihood. You know, you're doing it because you're putting food on the table for the rest of your family, and you're all working just as hard. So with that situation, it is time management. The biggest challenge at the moment is finding the time to put into both businesses and share that, whether it be amazing, whether it be IWS, the family business, and making sure that I don't sort of fall under the sort of caliber that I believe that I should be at both. And that's still a challenge for me, despite putting those apparatus in, you know, like whether it be a morning routine. You know, I'm still human. So as it starts snowing here recently, I can't tell you. I can tell you that I've made fudger, but let's be honest, fudger's pretty late. So making fudger isn't really an accomplishment. It's just I woke up. So not being able to do that time in the morning has now meant that I've had to do, for example, a lot of the amazing work in the evening and delegate where I'd like to have done a certain amount myself. So the challenge at the moment is really, really sticking to that routine, even when the seasons change, and ensuring that I don't take on too much as well. That's a massive challenge, because I think a lot of people, when they talk, and you'll really understand this because you're newly married as well, but a lot of people talk about the sort of highs of a startup, and then the lows are always like, you know, we nearly ran out of money, but then we made it and we got an investment round, or, you know, it's always very business related. But what people should realize is the family side of what you do when you're having a startup, when you're running your own business, is massively important. And it is a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge, especially when you're newly married like we are, and you need to make sure that you give enough time to your family, but also for your own mental health. So the challenge that I would say I'm overcoming, I'd certainly say I'm overcoming it, is time management, but time management in multiple different ways, making sure that I provide enough value for the company, which is technically secondary. But most importantly, is that I provide enough time for my family and in terms of my own wellness. That's something I'm still trying to conquer. So inshallah, you know, give it till 2023. I'm sure I'll find another app that will allow me to get that a little bit further. But you know, I'm working on it. I'm getting better, but it's certainly a challenge that I'm trying to overcome.
I mean, I completely resonate with everything you said. I mean, I work for a family business and I work my own business, and obviously being newly married, I think that's one of the challenges that I'm faced is time management. As much as we plan and are good at managing our time, there's something that's going to have to be sacrificed one way or another. Yeah. Because like, okay, my working hours in my family business are 7 hours a day, right? And I know the hours I have to work, but sometimes things you need to do overtime. Sometimes, you know, you're getting calls at random hours. Sometimes your day off is not a day off. And then given, like, for example, like Muslim Emir recently, because of the amount of pressure and the amount of work we have in my family business, Muslim Emir has taken a sort of, not a back seat, but it's not taken as much attention as it needed to. Exactly. And then being newly married, I think one of the challenges I face at the moment, maybe, I don't know if you've faced this, but because I work from home. So I'm actually always at home. I'm always in front of my wife, but I'm working, right? And here in Jordan, I don't have an office. So back home in the UK, I actually have an office in the house. So that may help things, because obviously I can shut the door, I'm in my office, she don't see me, and she might forget I'm home. But right now I'm sat like in the middle of the house. So anytime I'm working here, she can see me, but we can't talk, right? Because I'm working. So then it creates that problem of like, I know you're here and like you're with me, but you're not. And that creates a bigger problem, because it's like, or a bigger challenge, let's say, because it's like, yes, you're right in front of me, and you know, I understand you're working, but you're not giving me any quality time. Yeah. And then that creates, you know, sort of challenges. And then it's like work challenges, waking up in the morning, So like, again, that challenge, for example, I'm in Jordan right now. I still operate in UK time. We're 3 hours ahead of the UK at the moment. So that faces, a lot of challenges. The World Cup right now is on. Most of the games don't finish till like 1 a.m. in Jordan. So all of these things interlink. And I think, you hit it right on the head with, sometimes things have to, trying to outsource things. Like we said earlier, I mean, I've reached a stage now where I pretty much outsource so much stuff for Muslim Emir because I just don't have the time to do it. And obviously you're delegating because obviously you have the team to do it. Alhamdulillah, I'm outsourcing. So it's the same sort of principle, which is good. So bro, so what we do in this part of the interview, we get the guest to share what we call the value bomb. So this is Raees's value bomb. The one piece of value that you would like to share with us, that's your, wow moment for us. Bit of value.
From my perspective.
Yeah. So like, what's the one piece of value you'd like to share with us that's like the value bomb?
Yeah, I think I've got a good one. And for me, it's transformed everything that we've done personally, professionally, especially when you're growing your own company as well, and you're doing it at a young age. It's the value is don't be afraid to ask. And I know I mentioned something similar earlier, right? But this is a little bit different. Now, LinkedIn for me is a massive, massive, massive platform. And if you're listening to this and don't have a LinkedIn account, but you do want to get involved with knowing thought leaders, even like Muslim Emir, they're doing a lot of work on the likes of LinkedIn. But because it's such a new platform, it makes it so much easier to access these thought leaders, these people that know a lot more than what you've done in terms of they're older than you, they've done it, they've made those mistakes, they've had those successes, they're there and they're ready to be accessed. Personally speaking, don't get me wrong, I've had very, very good experience from working in the family business. My dad is my mentor. But when you go into a different industry or you take a different sort of a route, sometimes you can't do everything by yourself. I'll rephrase that. Every time you can't do everything by yourself. And it is always good to ask other people for help, even if it's just insight for coffee. So the value bomb, I would say, probably sounds really small, but I tell you now, if you're listening to this and you do it, it will change your life. Is find someone that inspires you on LinkedIn, that has the answers to what you think is a challenge that you have, and ask them for advice. I tell you now, 90% of the time, they will reply. And the 10%, they'll reply positively and they'll give you that advice. And what I would also say is, if you can try and do that face-to-face or on Zoom, however you want to do it, is do it that way, right? Don't leave it to messages. Always get to a face-to-face one way or another. And if it can be in person for that coffee, please make sure you do those miles and get to them. But what I would say is, if on the 10% that you don't receive a reply, just be aware that they haven't replied. They haven't said no to you. They may not have read your message. But personally speaking, I've moved from the water industry, the agricultural industry for the family business, into what you could say is a Muslim-centric industry. And having spoken about my upbringing being mixed race, not having many Muslim friends growing up, and certainly much better company and amazing friends, good choice of words, amazing friends when I got to uni, trying to find that caliber of person that's above you in terms of what they've done, what they know, and who you think I could genuinely learn from is extremely important. And to be able to have them to mentor you, even if it's for a conversation for 5 minutes, that 5 minutes has now enriched your life. So the value bomb that I would say, and I've done it multiple times, is speak to the person. I mean, you and I are on this call because I reached out to them. I love the content you put out. The content you put out when I'm scrolling through it is teaching me. So I want to have a call with you. That was how you and I got talking, really. We were in each other's comments, don't get me wrong, but a conversation is very different. And being able to reach out to people that you like. Personally, I've done it to about 4 or 5 different people. And out of those 4 or 5, all 5 of them I've met up with and learned a hell of a lot more. And you don't know when they're going to give you that introduction that could change your life. Personally speaking, that's what's happened. I have no right being in this industry, not having any experience in it before. I am a Muslim, don't get me wrong, but I'm not anyone who's done tech before. I'm not anyone who has that many connections in the Muslim industry. That's obviously changed now with the likes of LinkedIn. And I'm not anyone that really understands how, for example, directories or business to business models work. So reaching out and finding out from people that do understand that, that is my value bomb to your listeners. I think if you can get the courage just to write a message and don't make it sincere, ask, you know, if you've got something, say, look, I like what you're doing. I've really found value in X piece that you've spoken about recently. Make it specific and say, look, I'm doing this. Would you mind if I gave you a call or we had a cup of coffee? I'm in the area. And make sure you're in the area, even if you're not in the area. Find a way to be in the area because you don't know when what they say is going to change the course of what you're doing, change your life for better in terms of the advice they give you. But they might not even be the type of person you thought they are, but at least you know that and you've met them. You never know when they might be someone worth knowing in the future. And you never know what you might be able to put onto them as a person and the advice that you can give to them in the sort of place of their life that they're in as well. So don't be afraid to ask.
That's amazing, bro. And I think one, the power of LinkedIn obviously helps that. And number two, I think the power of reaching out, connecting, speaking, asking is super powerful. I mean, especially for someone like you and I, who, you know, I mean, my business is 18 months old. You know, your business is fairly new, maybe 2 or 3 years old. It's allowing us to understand what problems we should be solving, how we should engage with our audience, how we can improve our services, and how we can uplift the ummah and empower those that we interact with. And I think that's a great value bomb. And it connected really well with what you said earlier, to ask questions, reach out. And it's actually true. Me and you reached out to me, and then we jumped on a call fairly quickly. And now we're here. And, you know, alhamdulillah, and that all started from that first initial question. So barakallahu feek for that value bomb. I think it's super, super powerful. What we're going to do now, we're going to do quick fire round questions, just to have a little bit of fun and find out a little bit more about you personally. So are you ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Burger or pizza?
Pizza.
Socks on before or after your trousers when getting ready in the morning?
Socks after.
After. Brush your teeth before or after breakfast?
Oh, I'm gonna get so judged for this. It's before. I don't know why, but it's in the routine, okay?
Are you a movies or series kind of guy?
Ooh, series, I'd say.
Series. Are you watching anything good at the moment?
I just finished House.
House. Do you recommend it?
That's like medical Sherlock. Really, really good.
Yeah, nice. Personal development books or novels?
Sorry, personal development?
Personal development books or novels?
Oh, personal development. I say both. I make time for both.
Cool.
I say both. I know I'm not allowed to, but I'm saying both.
No, that's fine. You are allowed to. Are you a ketchup or mayo kind of guy?
Oh, mayo.
Mayo. And final question, business owner or employee?
Got to be business owner.
Business owner, yeah. Barakallah feek, akhi. Jazakallah khair for coming on. Guys, inshallah, you found as much value as I have from this conversation and this interview. Bro, where can they find you if you want to give a shout out to your services?
Yeah, sure. Find us on ummazing.com. That's ummazing.com. Ummah and amazing.com.
MashaAllah, amazing. And obviously, you'll see all the links down below where you can find Raees' personal profile, the link to the website. Jazakumullah khair for tuning in into today's episode on the Speak Sense podcast. I've been Osama Muslim Amir. Until next time, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe to our channels. And I'll see you soon, inshallah. Subhanaka rabbi hamdik astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.